Oh my gosh, rich.
These are good.
I mean, they're good.
I think with something like this, like your margin's gotta be pretty great, right? You're selling $5 cookie. It's gotta cost you 60 cents.
I assume so.
Mr. Restaurant.
Yeah. What's the margin on Chroma Cookie? You can tell me? No.
Hi everybody, it's Bobby here with Franchise Sidekick, and we're here today to talk about how do you build the ultimate super team. Tyler, give me a little scoop on what ingredients you use to build your super team.
I see what you did there. Ingredients, that was good. Cookie, get it?
I mean, I got it.
She's good. Oh man, it's tough. I tell you what, like hiring that key employee is the most important thing you're gonna do, right? Leveraging your network is really where you have to go, I think. Like you can definitely put out some ads and get some people, but leveraging that network, who's that person who's gonna be that key person that's gonna really drive that business going forward? So I think the hard part is finding the person, and then you gotta find a creative way to structure it, right? Like how are we gonna structure this deal, keep them excited? It can't be a short-term solution too, it's gotta be a long-term solution. It's gotta be something where you potentially give equity or things like that, but it starts with your network and reaching out to people, because I'm a firm believer that people want to be part of something that's growing, and it really doesn't even come down to money a lot of times. It's important for people, but they want two things. They want money, but they also want to be part of something big and something growing. So personal growth, self-growth is why we're all here.
I think also you go through phases, right? Your first people are the most important. They're setting the groundwork internally with your team coming on. They are setting the standard. Also in your market, right? Like early on, you only get a certain amount of first impressions, right? So that first employee gotta live and breathe that brand. And that's why, we've always talked about starting your network. Start with people that are not only all about that brand, but they're all about you and your family and helping. People that maybe don't have the skill set for that brand, right? Like we're talking gutters. You're not looking for the guy that can hang the best gutters. You're looking for the guy that wants to be your right-hand man and run it for you. The technical skills you can train in. Now we talk about partners too. You want to have a balance, right? Me and Tyler were business partners. We are very opposite in skill sets, right? What I hate to do, he loves to do, and vice versa. So sometimes when we start within our network, we happen to hang around a lot of people that do what we do, like what we like, that kind of stuff. So you got to play that balance of same mindset, different skill set.
Yep. So I would tell people, as you're evaluating a franchise, figure out your skill set. Like what are you going to be doing, right? Like a beautiful part of a franchise is you can kind of pick and choose. So let's say you're a semi-absentee guy. Let's say you've got a 9-to-5 job. You're not going to leave that. But you need to find really what you are going to be doing. So it's 5 to 10 hours a week. If you're a strong marketer, you can still kind of play that role. Then you got to go find a good ops person. Who's that ops person is going to drive it? If you're going to be involved in the business, maybe you're still a good marketer. Go find another ops person, or maybe you're a good ops person, find that marketer. So to your point, you typically hang out with people that have a similar skill set or that do the same, but be very cautious of that, because that is a nightmare scenario. If you have two partners, same skill set, you're going to be like this all the time.
Mm-hmm. I always tell my clients, dig the well before you get thirsty, right?
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, so
You always tell your clients, are they like, what are you talking about?
Start building that stream of, key employees well before you need them, right?
I got it now.
Really, really go. Like I'm always looking for operators, business partners, whatever. I have no clue what business I'm gonna buy next, but I start finding people. And then I go to them. I go, look, I got more capital to deploy. What do you guys want to do? Right? I know what I'm good at. I'm good at operations. What do you guys like to do? What can we deploy into?
Yep.
So I'm always looking for people first, right? Some of my clients say, jockey first, horse second. Find the people and then figure out what they're good at and deploy them into it. And your number one partner is a franchisor.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing. You're talking about, I have this skill set. Find complementary skill sets that you don't have out of that franchisor. I always look for things that do all of my marketing, because unlike you, I hate marketing. So I look for brands that do all my marketing, because that's what I suck at, and I'm willing to pay a royalty to get that done. They're your number one partner.
You said something that was really interesting. So I'm always leery of people who reach out to me and say, I'm looking for something, what do you have? Or like the people are like, hey, I'm looking for something a little bit different. I love trying to recruit people who already have a good job and they're excited about their job to see if I can pull them away with something new. And I know they're invested if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
This guy's making good money. He actually likes his job, but I'm like, hey, I've got this thing. It's gonna be awesome. That's different than somebody's like, hey, I don't like my job. You have anything coming up or like whatever? I'm leery of those people a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's a good point with building your well.
Yeah,
Whatever
I
you
always
said. Build your well. What is that thing? Build your well? What?
Yeah, you gotta dig the well
Dig the
before
well.
you get thirsty.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. Okay, perfect. I like it.
I'll write it down.
So we talked about structuring a partnership and finding the right people. But we know as well, franchises come with the culture. And I know you're a big, big culture guy.
Yeah.
So how do you, after you found these people, how do you support that culture and instill it in them?
Yeah. It starts at the franchisor level. Like the brand you're buying into has a culture, right? Like that is, when you're doing validation, you're evaluating the brand, the existing franchisees. That culture is so important because you can't have a franchisor with bad culture and you try to instill your own culture. It's a lot harder. You can do it, right? Like you can remove yourself, but you want to work with them as a partnership, right? So you got to really bolt onto their culture. So embrace when you evaluate that culture, whether it be a service brand or a retail, really during validation and C Day, get to know the owners, where they're going, the direction, talk to existing franchisees. A lot of people say things, but are they doing what they're saying, right? So that's the most important. Like, is it a culture of excellence and execution, or is it a culture of like, yeah, we're gonna do this, nothing ever happens? That's the worst kind of toxic culture that you can have. Also, turnover at corporate. How many employees are turning over at corporate? Like, are they turning over their marketing team, their ops team? Like, that's a whole nother disaster as well. So understand the culture first with the franchisor, and then figure out how you're going to fit into it. What are you going to bring to the table? And then your little business, you got to find a way to build that same sort of culture. But that culture is a little bit different, I think. When you're building that business, it's investing in those employees, learning about families, getting invested in them, knowing that you're in it with them is super important too. I always think that's really, really important. Knowing, even if you're semi-absentee, you're in this with them and you're going to grind alongside them in whatever capacity you're willing to do.
Yeah, I think it's so true. It's got to start at the franchisor level, right? There's a ton of ways to make money in this world. Don't do it with people you don't like and trust, right? So that's got to be key and something that you believe in, right? There's different ones that are all numbers driven. Highest revenue wins. No matter what happens, we're here to sell. And there's some that are very service oriented, very family oriented. Figure out what you like, right? Earlier in my career, I was that hard driving kind of guy. Now it's more of a lifestyle feel. And I want that not just for me, but like you said, for your employees, for their families, right? If your goals are aligned with theirs, right? If I care if their family eats, they're gonna care if my family eats, right? And everybody says, oh, our team is like a family and stuff like that. That's not always true, but you have to respect that person's family, right? They have a ton of different opportunities that they could go to too. And you gotta respect that they chose you, right?
And be willing to do the work too. Like, this is important. I don't care if you own 15 crumble cookies, you need to show up at least every couple weeks and get back there and make cookies.
Absolutely.
You need to, if you own an installation company, show up every couple weeks. If you're not super invested, get in there, get in the attic, do that thing. Show them you're willing to do it and you're willing to learn from them and you're on their level, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's like, that's above me, and they own the business. It's the most annoying and frustrating thing for me.
Well, that and also you can't hold somebody accountable to something that you don't know how to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like in our businesses, if I didn't work in the store, I wouldn't know how to call BS on stuff. Oh, well, that customer just didn't want to talk. Well, did you do this, this, and this? Because when I was on the floor, that's what I did. Right? I knew all the loopholes because I tried to use the loopholes when I was being lazy. So you know what that is, and you know how to, right, inspect what you expect. You can step in and know if it's off. If you have no clue how the business functions, you can't spot check it, especially if you're semi-absentee. You got to be able to see immediately, because you only got 5 hours, right? You got to see immediately. You can't take 40 hours to figure out there's an issue if you're only given 5, or you're way off the path.
And the last thing I think to sum it up on a good culture is we'll go back to expectations. Set expectations have accountability, also know how you're going to measure those expectations, and also have accountability on the back end. I think that is the last part of the secret sauce of how to build a good culture is accountability. If somebody is failing, not doing their job, either you need to get them back to where they need to go, or they need to be gone.
People get confused, from what I've heard, people get really confused on how do you actually structure a partnership agreement or employment agreement. Can you clarify how you can get all of those in order and align them so it can work out for the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, I guess. It depends on what your goals are. So I guess we work through a couple different examples. So let's say you have, you got the money already figured out, you've got the brand figured out, you need an operator, right? In that scenario, me personally, it is preference, but I would do some sort of operating partner agreement where maybe I give them 10% vested schedule, where they don't get all 10% up front. They get 10% over, let's say, 5 to 7 years. So that ensures they're gonna stay there. So go 25% out of the gate, then maybe 50. So they get vested over time, give them a base salary, and they get some sort of profit sharing at the end of the year for a bonus. That'd be a good example of maybe one.
I think a lot of it is, going back to what you always say, is setting expectations, right? What drives them, right? Sometimes employees couldn't care less about equity. They want a higher salary.
Yep.
They want to be able to pull that ripcord whenever they want, and cool, you know? That maybe not the right person for your first operator then. If they just want a salary and they don't see value in equity, then is that really their long-term strategy?
Yeah.
I want to, selfishly, as an investor, I want to tie him in.
Yep.
I want to make it very hard for him to leave, and not in a, you know, vendetta kind of way, but I got to know when it gets hard, because every business gets hard, he's not going to bounce.
Yep.
And I think that's really big. And, you know, for me, how I structure my deals is money gets you equity, time gets you compensation. And what I mean by that is, like, if I bring in a partner and say the investment's 100K and I bring 90 and he brings 10, then he gets 10 equity and I get 90 equity. If he's the guy boots on the ground, he gets a comp package. He gets a salary, he gets benefits, all that kind of stuff. If I don't bring time, I don't bring comp. And the reason I do that is because if he originally gets all equity for his time as the GM, well, as an owner, your job is eventually to work your way out of the business. So if at one point he's no longer putting in time, well, he's still got equity and I got equity, but I put all the money in and he's no longer putting in the time. So I like equity as far as cash injection, and then I like comp structure for time invested. If he scales back his hours, then he knows he's getting less, you know, comp, scales in, that kind of stuff. So I like that kind of piece.
Yep. Really depends on, that's a good point. Like if you bring up the equity piece to them and they're like, yeah, I want no part of that, then you know they're probably not gonna be in this for long term. They may be a good employee, hang out for a couple years, may or not be, but it still may be worth bringing them on as an employee. So that's option number one. Go from there, like what would be your next option? So let's say you have,
Well, I think we talk about equity a lot, and I think what's undervalued and a lot of people don't think about is a profit share, right? Profit share is basically after all expenses, whatever we make, we split it. And what I like about that is it's easy to unwind, right? So if that person leaves, they don't have part of your business. You don't have to buy them out. You don't have to pay them to leave, basically. If you need to fire them, same thing. So it's not as committal as actual equity partner. They don't actually get say, they can't pull debt on the company, all that kind of stuff, but they are still compensated on growth. They are still incentivized monetarily as if they're owners, but without the, you know, say, structure, responsibility, that kind of stuff. That could be a stepping stone too, kind of to your vesting.
Yeah, so that's a great example. And then maybe go back to a traditional partnership. So let's say you and me want to partner on a business, but we're both going to be operating that business. That's an example of like maybe a 50-50 scenario. You know, if we're both operating, which we've done before, own a business, and then we're both doing our thing. We have different roles, but we're 50-50 in partnership. And so everything is, we're throwing the money in, or we're getting debt financing on that business together. So that'd be more of a traditional partnership that we talked about here. So anything on that?
I think a big part too is always going back to expectations, right? We've always owned multiple businesses and stuff like that. What is our goal for this business?
Yes,
right?
true.
Is it, because if I'm living off of this business and it is a long-term play for you, that is a different time horizon.
Yep, true.
I need to take X amount to feed my family, and you're going, shove it back in, let's grow it and exit one day. That's not aligned and you're gonna butt heads. So you gotta be aligned in what's the purpose of this business? If we're both cash flowing off of it, or we're both shoving every dime back into it, not taking anything out and going, we're gonna have a massive exit one day, you gotta align there. So not only expectations of what are you gonna do, what am I gonna do, but what do you want out of it and what do I want out of it?
Yep. So then you have the other version, I guess, of that would be more of a silent partner. And silent partner would be somebody you go to Uncle Fred, and he's got $5 million. You're like, Uncle Fred, I need some money. More of a loan, right? But loans aren't all created the same. So what I like to call dumb money and smart money, right? So you got two scenarios here. You take money from somebody, they're gonna offer advice whether you like it or not. So you gotta be aware of the fact that Uncle Fred is probably gonna give you some advice unsolicited you don't want. So that's more dumb money. Nothing against any Uncle Freds out there, but that's more dumb money, right? Smart money is maybe an investor that does it a lot, that has some really good skill set you wanna leverage. Maybe they've already had a big exit, maybe they're a CEO or something, or a business owner, that they're not active, they're still just an investor, but you can make that call and be like, hey, what do you think about this problem or whatever? There's two different scenarios there. So when you take money from people, it's not all created the same. You have to be very careful of that. There's a lot of Uncle Freds out there, so just be very cautious of the Uncle Freds, if that's what you want or don't want.
Well, and I think structuring it, you got to get back to what do they want out of it, right? Do they want a larger dollar amount, or they want it back faster?
Yep.
Right, so it's amount or time, I think, are the two leverage points there. Of like, if you want it quick, that's gonna be really hard for me to do. You're gonna get less, I'm gonna squeeze the margins there, I'm gonna pay you less, blah, blah, blah. If it's like, hey man, I'm investing, you don't have to start paying me back for 3 years, he's gonna want more for that, right? And you also are competing, right? That's what people forget is they have other places they can put money. So you gotta go in and make a good, solid offer saying, hey, I am worth the risk more so than that apartment building, more so than that stock, whatever. So you gotta play a little bit of sales there, and you gotta figure out if it's an equity piece or purely debt service, right?
There's also a vanity play there. Like I have a friend who owns a really successful company. He takes a lot of money from outside investors. That it's a really sexy and cool, exciting business, and they like to just be part of it. And honestly, they get a return, but it's really kind of nominal return. They just want to be a part of the business because they think it's cool. And I've seen that before too, especially if somebody's got plenty of money and it's not a huge investment. They just want to say, I'm an investor in that company. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and a big thing for that when it relates to a franchise too, is if it's a debt service and you're going, look, I'll just pay you back 5% over 10 years, whatever, then a lot of times that franchisor will let you keep them off of the franchise agreement, which also keeps them from being operationally involved and making crucial decisions for the business. So you talk about smart money and dumb money. I want silent money.
Yeah,
right?
very true. Yep.
Where you can talk, but you can't actually affect. Now, that creates some friction, but I don't want my investor having the same say in whether we buy another one. He can't talk to my franchisor and butt heads with them, right? And what I sell them on is, hey, that also limits your risk by not being on a franchise agreement. That limits your time. You don't have to be on these, go to convention or be on these meetings. You don't have to go to confirmation day. So they get less say. They also have less risk and less time involvement, which is usually what they're looking for.
Thanks, Tyler, and thank you, Michael, for the information that you provided to us. Hopefully you guys have been given a little bit more to add to your recipe to building your super team. And speaking of recipe,
I'm in.
Oh yeah.
Cookies. I think you should go back for the brownie
It
mint.
wasn't that good, honestly.
You should try that one.
This one, is bacon?
I think that's cinnamon.